All right, I think we're live. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Blacks in Technology presents The Tech Life Getting Hired. This is a Google Hangout web series where we talk to Black women, Black men who are in tech, who are working at some top tech companies, as well as being entrepreneurs. And we talk to them about their experiences, and they share their knowledge with us about what it takes to get hired, amongst other things. And tonight we're actually going to talk about the art of negotiating. And what I like about this episode is that one of our guests, Ayori Selassie, she helped me on my career path. She gave me a lot of good advice, and I thought it was a really it was a necessity for us to have this conversation and discuss why negotiating and knowing how to negotiate when you're in these positions, why it's helpful for your career and why a lot of people should know and have this knowledge. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest, Ayori Selassie. She's the founder of selfpreneur.com. Hey, Ayori.
Hey, hi everybody. How are you? From the West Coast, Oakland, California.
Yeah. And Tameika Reed, founder of Women in Linux.
Hey everyone, how are you? Glad to be back. I hope everybody is safe in California too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I'm glad you said back. Both of you two are back, actually. Both of you appeared on episodes of the Bit Tech Talk podcast before, so you guys are pretty familiar with with this whole setup and everything. So let's get started. First, let's start off. I want you all to introduce yourselves. Give us a little bit of your background. The common question we always ask is kind of how you got into tech. So we'll start with you, Tameika.
I'm Tameika Reed, founder of Women in Linux. Pretty much got into tech from just doing Cisco networking, and then moved over from there to doing Linux administration. Been doing that now for 18 years, but haven't seen really any other women that look like me. In fact, I haven't even seen that many brothers until I met Greg. And I think Sean. So as far as the Linux realm goes, I really haven't seen a lot of minorities. So, we call it Women in Linux, but we do have men that are in our group that are allies. So, we try to support, everyone in their mission if they want to get in tech, whether it be from an infrastructure perspective, or they want to do middleware, or if they want to do front end or back end, whatever the case may be, just trying to get you in tech, trying to get you visible, trying to get you some money, trying to get you be able to feed your family.
Excellent. And then Ayori?
Ayori Selassie here from Oakland, California. I've been working in the technology industry for 20 years. I started my first company when I was 16 years old. It was the first African-American owned technology store in Oakland, California with my brother. Went through a bunch of different acquisitions, worked at startups, worked at big companies, and now I run selfpreneur.ai. So you can check us out at selfpreneur.ai. I'm the creator of the life model design methodology. You can learn about that at lifemodeldesign.com. What we do with life model design is we basically help people to use design thinking to solve problems in their life. So whether you're looking to increase your financial capabilities, increase your wealth, and create generational wealth, there are solutions for you if you start to apply design thinking to your life. You can also use those same techniques to improve your health, to improve your relationships, and really all the things that really ultimately matter to you in life. And so I'm really honored to be on this show today. We've been talking about it for a minute, and this is my first time getting a chance to talk to Tameika. She's a hero of mine. Linux represent.
Thank you.
It's been a while since I've been in the shell, but you know what I'm saying? I know about that.
Look, now she talking about thug life. Yeah, that thug tech life, that terminal life.
So
command line for the win.
Yeah, that's right. Them.
Oh, also you can check out my blog at theselfpreneur.com.
Excellent, excellent. And once again, I want to reiterate the point that in my last position, I confided in Ayori about some things that I was going through as far as my my job and future potential jobs, and she helped me out a lot. And this conversation came about because I think we were talking about some things in the Blacks in Technology Slack channel, and we were just like, hey, let's do a show about this. Let's talk about this. I think it's much needed. I know I've run into quite a few people just through mentoring or even just in our Slack channel where this discussion comes up and people are not aware of certain things when it comes to negotiating. And I can tell you just from talking with Ayori and with her guidance, it gave me a lot more confidence, and it let me actually be able to understand what my worth and my value is to a company. So I want to kind of start there, and I want to start with you, Ayori. Tell me a little bit about why you think this conversation is important.
Yeah, I didn't really realize how important negotiating was. In the past, if you had asked me early on in my career about negotiation or about haggling or any of those things, I would have told you, I don't like doing that. Just tell me what the price is, give me the number, and I'll give you a yes or a no. And then I realized that was actually extremely naive way of thinking, that the world actually doesn't work that way. And you lose out if you try and operate in that way, because other people are certainly happy to take advantage of that. And so figuring out what your worth is in the market and figuring out how to make sure that others are aware that you know what your worth is in the market is critical to laying a healthy foundation for your life, for everything from you being positioned to buy a house, being positioned to put your children through college, or get that advanced degree that you might be interested in that can further help you, excel. So all of these things are critical to the conversation of knowing your value, knowing how to communicate your value, and really demand that other people respect that. And that's something that we don't all learn. The world doesn't really set us up to teach us that. And we kind of need to be nurtured in that way. So, I kind of stumbled upon it the hard way. And then I started reading about it. And after I started reading about it, I started talking to my friends about it. And I started realizing a lot of people didn't know, just like I didn't know. So I've coached. I've been really, really, really happy to have, coached a lot of people through negotiations and seen people's salaries double and triple, and seeing them buy houses and seeing them start companies and seeing them raise funds. And, especially when they're African-American people, and it's not just African-American people, it's everyone, right? We're not the only people who don't have this information. This is pretty much standard, but I think we are the ones who have to take on the responsibility for sharing this information with the rest of our community.
Agreed.
Tameika, do you have anything to add to that? Why you think it's important? Go ahead.
Yeah, so for me, from my perspective, the reason why I think it's important is because I think, I was, it's not a thing, because I know I was in a situation where I had to figure out what my worth was. And I don't think a lot of people understand that conversation that you have with yourself is a very important conversation, because when you don't understand what your worth is, you'll take anything that sounds good. So when you figure out what your worth is, what your true potential is, then you'll start demanding more, not just from yourself, but making other people give you more than what you initially thought that you were worth. So one of my best prime examples was moving from San Antonio, Texas to DC, where in that situation, the employer called me. He's like, "Yeah, I have a job offer for you. after, you know, after we've done on everything that we need to do, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna offer you 100,000 but no relocation. And I was like, yeah, that's nice, but no. Because in my eye, it takes me minimum, just this is just minimum. It takes a minimum, if you got a 2-bedroom home and you're single, it's going to take you a minimum of $10,000 to move if you're getting other people to move you. Now, if you want to move yourself, cool, whatever. But I had to do the evaluation. Okay, I take the $10,000 to move. Then I had to get there. I had to get an apartment. Got to get everything turned on. I got to get my car over there. I got to get all this other stuff over there. It's gonna be a chore. That's gonna be more money. Now, where do I have to get this money from? I'm leaving one job to go to another job. I'm gonna miss a paycheck here somewhere. So it's either going to come out of my pocket, it's going to come out your pocket. I prefer your pocket. I prefer to keep my money. So knowing that is knowing, like, what can I negotiate within that. So I learned from that, and then I also learned by just watching. I watch how people interact with each other and how people move, because when you start watching how people interact with each other and how people move, you pick up a lot of stuff. Staying silent is not a bad thing. You just got to know when to strike. You know, so that's my take.
And I think something that's really important that you touched on was knowing your worth, and when you don't, you're liable to jump at the first thing that comes at you, right? And I know that I've been guilty of that early in my career, where things, you know, lucky for me, like the jobs always end up turning out okay, but you know, I know there were some things probably that could have been negotiated a lot better, but you know, especially when you're early in your career. People have this mindset where they don't feel like they should be asking for certain things at that point, right? It's too early in my career. I just, you know, I'm trying to get on. I'm trying to get my foot in the door. I shouldn't be pushing this. And I've had those experiences before. And it causes you to kind of jump the gun at times. But Ayori, let's elaborate on that a little bit. Let's talk about kind of what your first experience was with negotiation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was like most people, where, you know, it was you know, insecure, you know, just kind of wanting to get the job, and not wanting in the mind, not wanting to put yourself in a situation where somebody is going to then ask of you more than you're capable of giving because they're paying you some amount of money. That does not exist. I repeat, that situation and scenario does not exist. But I know there are a lot of people out there thinking that and thinking in that way, like holding themselves back and saying, I don't need that much money. I only need this much money. This is more than enough for me. No, you know, it's not enough for you until it's market rate. It's not enough for you until it's, you know, equal to the, you know, maximum value that they're willing to compensate you for.
Yep.
Because, you know, when you get into a job and then, you know, they may put you on some standard promotion cycle or raise cycle, that's not going to keep pace with inflation. So wherever you come in at, you're already going to be put to task with trying to keep that afloat for your lifestyle, whatever your lifestyle may be. Not to mention, you might have medical challenges in the future. You might have family changes. All sorts of things can happen. And what you need to be expecting is that the situation, the job in which you're working, that you're getting paid enough, that you're able to put enough away so that you have autonomy to make the choices that you need to make in your life. And to your point, Greg, I know you asked me what was my first experience, and my first experience was really kind of born out of total ignorance. You know, I was offered a position for a job, and I was getting ready to take it, and it was basically double what I was making at the time. I was on a contract position previously. They were offering me a permanent role with benefits and everything. I was like, okay, this is this is a really good opportunity. And so I was going to leave my previous job, and I went to them with it, and they were like, oh, we'll match it. I'm like, wait a second, I've been working here for how many years? And now all of a sudden, tell them I'm about to leave, you're gonna pay me this amount of money. So they didn't just match it, they exceeded it. So that was my first experience with negotiation. So when you're getting ready to leave a job, when they make a counteroffer, that is already a negotiation. You didn't even realize you're entering in a negotiation, because it's pretty much, if you're a good quality employee, if you don't have any problems with your performance, then you're really always negotiating. You're always in a position to negotiate. And then the second experience I had, which also like further blew my mind, was I was offered a promotion, and it was for a job that I didn't want, and I said no. And so they were like, wait, what? You're already doing the job. We're just trying to offer you this promotion. I said, no, it's not enough money. I was doing the job. They wanted to give me more money to keep doing the job. And I said, no, it's not enough money. No, thanks. You can keep it. And what did they do? They increased that amount dramatically. I mean, the number that I ended up with was like life-changing.
Right.
So kind of things happen, but I didn't know that kind of thing could happen. So I kind of stumbled on it in ignorance. And then I started researching from that point on, and now I get to help people.
And I want to add on to that, because here's another thing that I think that gets kind of like misguided. Like when you go on Glassdoor and you look at all these jobs and so forth and so on, and they say, well, the average salary is this. I just look at that and be like, it's probably like 10 to 20% lower than what it actually is. Because sometimes those jobs are misleading. Like if you go look up now, probably like a Linux administrator or something like that, a senior, I think they're coming in around about 75 to 80,000. I just don't know any senior Linux administrators that are gonna take that type of job at that type of pay, because 9 times out of 10 is probably more than just being a Linux administrator. So right. It's also understanding how to read, job descriptions. What is it that they're actually looking for? That kind of plays into how your funds are going to roll out too. That's another thing that's important. Like if you got to wear a lot of hats, and those many hats that you have, or hey, I need for you to be a security engineer, a cloud architect. I need for you to know JBoss as well too, how to architect that, how to do some automation tools and do this and do that. But we only going to pay you 60,000. I guarantee you that job has probably been posted for a while, and they can't feel it at that cost. So it's just understanding, the skills and understanding, what you have in your toolbox that drives that force of getting that offer, or looking at that offer and saying, nah, that's not going to work for me.
Mm-hmm. And that leads to a good question. Like how does a person measure themselves against something like that to even be able to come out and say? So for instance, Tameika, you were mentioning, a Linux admin, but it could be more than that. And you listed all these different skills, and you listed, or you talked about the potential salary being like $60,000 for a person. Let's just say they did have those skills and they were only making at the time 45,000, right? So then they look at that and they say, oh, 60,000, I already have these skills. That's great. And that's where that's kind of where they leave it at, right? They leave it at, now I'll just ask for 60,000. I'm not going to ask for any more because I'm only making 45,000 right now. This is a $15,000 increase. So kind of how do they get to that point to where they're able to look at this job description, look at their own skills, and then say, you know what, this is way under market value. Like they need to really they need to come with more money, or I'm not even going to entertain this at all, because this is not nearly enough.
So for me, I do a couple of things. I usually look at, the basic skills, or not basic skills, the list of skills that they list, and then I go look up and I say, okay, a security engineer. I go and look and see how much a senior security engineer is making. Or if it's a particular application that they listed, I go and look and see exactly how much that person, or what they say the average is. And I skew that probably about 10 to 15%. And then I go and I look back and I say, okay, well, let me put all these skill sets together and see what do I have in my bag of tricks. And that's probably not a good term to use, but what do I have in my toolbox to make sure that I'm covering all my bases as far as these skill sets go. And then I come up with a good number that I know I can live off of. Right. And I try to look at it like, what can I live off of one paycheck? What is the one paycheck I can live off of? If you cool with going from 40 to 60 and you can live off of that paycheck, that's okay, but don't sell yourself short, because you could get more. The whole goal is to make sure that you're getting paid what you're worth. So for me, I just do a lot of research. I look at the company, I look at its culture, I look at the seat, because if you think about it, probably the average person probably gets anywhere over, say, a year span, probably like a $4,000 to $5,000 raise every year. That's probably about the average. And you put yourself and you say you're going to be at that company probably for 5 years. So you're getting a $25,000 raise over 5 years. Is that going to be enough to sustain you? Is that what you're worth over 5 years? And that's something that you have to ask yourself, because it's it kind of plays with your mind a little bit, because you're like, oh, I'm already making this. So in 5 years, I'll be making this. That's really what I'm worth. Or can I get that money now and then build up my skills and go somewhere else in another year or two? I think they say the average millennial, that's what they're saying, is probably stays on the job probably like a year, maybe 2 years. It's no longer the 3 to 5 years. It's a year or two. So you got to think about what is going to be your worth in a year. Is this going to be enough for you to sustain, to live off of one paycheck, bank another one, put it in your 401k, put it into a Roth IRA, or HSA, or whatever the case may be, and live off of it? That's how I look at it. That's how I come up with my numbers.
Gotcha. Ayori, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, my method is definitely different from that. The way I kind of look at everything is I look at it from like a reverse engineering perspective, based off of kind of gathering as much information as you can get, right? So I know, like, I have a very minimalistic life and behavior. So if I drove everything based off of what I needed, or even like what I would just like, I would be undervaluing myself so much, because I'm a very frugal person. So what I do is, number one, I make sure that I'm always interviewing. And this was some advice that was given to me by a white man. He told me to just always be interviewing, to like never stop. Don't wait until you hate your job and you want to find something new to start interviewing. And what I found, and I kind of was like, well, why? And he was like, just do it. Don't ask why, just do it. So I started doing it. And what I found is that when you don't need a job, you're going to ask all sorts of questions that you normally wouldn't feel comfortable asking. You're going to ask them, well, what's the salary ranges for this role before you even get into the interview? You're going to ask all sorts of questions, and they're going to need to kind of, give you answers and intel just to bring you in. Now, it does take time, it takes effort, but it's so worthwhile if that means that you're going to make an extra $20,000 or $30,000 the next job you take on, or it might even be more than that. So, I call it, a lot of times when people talk about negotiating, getting into your role, they talk about doing your diligence. And I actually don't like the word diligence, because I don't think it makes any sense. Like, it's just not clear or descriptive enough. And I prefer the term discovery. Because if you're doing discovery, that means that you're doing research online about the company, how they're doing financially. You're going to ask the people who you interview with, hey, why is this role available? Is it a brand new role, or is it a backfill? If it's a new role, that might be some indication that the company is growing. If the company is growing, you want to ask, how much are you expected to grow? How many more heads are you trying to add this year? That gives you an indication about how much budget they may have. Then you want to ask questions like, you know, how do you manage your highest potential talent? How do you handle your top talent? You want to find out if there are incentives that they have in place for top talent. Do they have any kind of special programs? Any of that kind of stuff, that's going to, again, give you intel about like what's available for you to kind of dig into once you start to get to negotiating, if you decide that you want the job. So that, I think a lot of that's just around, you know, asking the right questions and really putting yourself in situations where you feel confident to ask those questions. And the time when you're going to feel most confident in assessing your market value is when you are happy in your job. When you have a great job, you have great relationships with your managers and your peers. And in order for you to leave, you're going to need something really much better than what you got already. And it's already pretty good.
Yeah, I agree with the continued interview. I mean, I think I interview probably all the time. So for me, it's like it's a second nature. But I do ask before I even start the interview process. It's like, you know, what are the perks? What's the salary range? What are the perks? But I also ask, what's the turnaround time on that job? Because if they're trying to get somebody in ASAP, they're more than likely they're gonna do what they need to do to get that position filled, because they're trying to get that position filled. But if they got a turnaround time of a month, that means it's gonna probably be a lot of candidates. You know, you're gonna be forever. You might get a call back, you might not get a call back. Somebody's gonna drop the ball. So I try to find out that turnaround time as well too, because that's important. Because you could be interviewing with one job and then another one comes up and you're interviewing, and then they're stretching things out and you don't hear back from them, and you email and nobody calls or whatever. Like, no, I don't do business that way. Like, if I call you, if I email you, I need a response back on what are the next steps. Are we moving forward, or are we not? Because your time is precious, just like their time is precious. So, you know, like what you call it, say, reclaiming my time, reclaim your time.
Yeah. So many good things out of that question. I definitely want to touch on what Ayori was talking about when it comes to confidence when you already have a job and you're interviewing. And I know firsthand, it does give you confidence when you're already happy with where you're at. I think one of the biggest things for me when it comes to that is fielding requests from recruiters. That, you know, that this type of thing happens all the time with me, and sometimes I rub recruiters the wrong way because, you know, I remember there was a time where you didn't ask about salary, or the written rule was you didn't ask about salary yet, right? Like, that was one of the things you didn't ask about until you were in an interview. That's something I was actually taught, and it wasn't until you know, I talked to, and this was a few years ago when me and Ayori had conversations about this, but it wasn't until that time when I started really becoming a lot more confident in myself and the position that I was in, and the leverage I felt I had with already having a job and being happy when going into some type of negotiation. So a recruiter would email me and I would say, hey, you know, can you please send over the job description and the potential salary range? And I've had recruiters get offended. Oh, well, you know, it's going to be based on how well you interview. Really? How well I interview? that's what the salary is based off of. So you don't have a ballpark figure at all right now, or what it's totally based off. So I could come in and then you could say $70,000, and I can be like, you just wasted 2 weeks, 3 weeks of my time with this. Like that type of, but some people, I think it's good that we're talking about this, because some people don't know that, hey, you should maybe ask for that right out front. I know I do it every single time. So I think,
yeah, I like that.
Go ahead.
Even when you're talking to those recruiters, if they're reluctant to give you a number, and if you're good in your role right now, this is especially easier. But you tell them a number, give them a number that's higher, and if they say it's too high, then that's already giving you some kind of indication. But don't drop it way down. Drop it a little. You know what I'm saying? Until you start to feel like you're in the right little zone there, where they're still coming for you.
All right.
But it's above what you normally ask. And for people who live in California, they are no longer allowed to ask you their previous salary requirements.
Right.
That is a huge thing. And even in states where they can ask you, you don't have to disclose that.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
How do you deflect that then? What's the comeback when you don't want to give that information?
It's two things for me. If they come back and say we really need that, then I just don't continue the interview. I mean, because I don't have to. I'm already employed, right? I'm already employed. You're looking to fill the position, like I'm already employed. Or if they come back and they give me the range, I'm like, okay, well that's cool. That range is cool. I can work with that. Let's continue. But I try to get the range for myself, because other than that, you're just really like wasting your time. Hey, little one, how you doing?
My son Grayson. Say hi to everybody. You're being broadcasted live to a lot of people. All right, you go to bed. All right.
I have my little piece in that one. When they ask you, what's your if they're pushing on a number, you market rate, and if they keep to push you on that, have calculated your total compensation, and even the total compensation that you're getting right now, but it's really what you need. Like, for example, do you have a stipend for $10,000 a year for training? Most companies, at least in the Bay Area in California, offer a $5,000 stipend for training. So, double it, right?
Right.
What are your other benefits packages? Do you get volunteer time off? What's your paid time off? Give them a number for total comp, and then they can come back and figure out how to meet your total comp requirements.
Okay, excellent. So I'm gonna actually with this next question, I'm gonna give my least favorite experience with negotiation. I'm gonna give my story. A few years, I was working, I was employed, and somebody reached out to me. I think it was a recruiter, and the recruiter was, was asking me some questions and things like that about salary and things like that. And I think I, told them like, hey, no. Let me take that back. I asked them about what the potential salary was, and they basically came back to me like, it depends on your skill set and how well you interview. And so I went back with hey, I would like to have an idea of what let's not, I'm not big on wasting people's time, your time or my time. So if this is not going to be beneficial to me, if it's not something that's not even in the ballpark, then there's no need to have this conversation any further. And so this went back a couple of times, and the hiring manager somehow got looped in on this email thread. And the hiring manager was basically like, well, if he's not making this much, then I don't understand what the big deal is. Like, they didn't want to give me what the salary range was. And his answer to that was, unless he's making this much, then he should stop worrying about it. And it just so happens that I did make way more than what they were talking about. And I was like, I am making more than that, which is why I was asked. So for me, like that was the time where it got me heated, like during that. And that was just initial stages of negotiating. We hadn't even went through interviewing or anything like that. But it was that initial stand. I was just like, I wouldn't want to work for you anyhow, because you should have been a lot more forthright. This is not, I don't understand why there's, this secrecy around what you might offer somebody for a salary. Like that's just ridiculous. So that's my my horror story when it came to negotiating. What about you, Tameika?
For negotiating, I don't want to call it a horror story. I just want to call it bad communication. Got the job offer, was ready to go, ready to move, ready to go. Put in my 2 weeks, had everything in writing. Called the guy like, hey, I'm ready to, come on into the, to the new space, check it out, explore it and whatnot. Talked to him on the phone. He's like, yeah, we filled that position. I was like, say what? You filled the position. You already given me the offer, the whole nine, and the position was filled. He's like, yeah, I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do about it. And he kind of got ghost for like a whole month. I literally had to like pull back everything I was doing at my job. I literally had to go back and like, okay, now what do I do? How do I maneuver? Do I continue to interview? I mean, what's going on? So for me, that was a horror story for me in terms of, having somebody, a recruiter, not being forthright with the fact of what the employer was already doing. And even though I still had the actual job offer in my hand and accepted the job offer and was ready to move on, they still hire somebody. So, it's one of those things like, what is your ground there? What's your protection there? And with that being said, I want to say, like, when it comes to that, make sure when you get job offers, especially job offers that have non-competes in them and all of that stuff, go ahead and let a lawyer review that. Go ahead and let somebody go over those terms so you know exactly what grounds can you move on. If they hired somebody and you've already accepted the job offer and everything, what are your what's your power there? Because you're turning in your 2 weeks to your company, they're saying "c'est la vie," and here you come, with it's already filled. Thanks and have a nice day. Like, what's your power there? So, don't be afraid to get a lawyer involved to review the terms in which you're signing stuff and turn them back in, especially when they're non-competes, making sure that the offer is, like they can be bonded by that or binded by that offer. Make sure you know your power.
Yeah. Especially on that non-compete thing. Actually, I'm going to share a link that talks a little bit about non-compete agreements and why you should basically never sign those. If you've already signed one, I get it, but in a lot of states, you have flexibility to overturn that and make sure that you're not being held. That's really what it is. That's being held prisoner if they're trying to limit your mobility, your career mobility in the future. So instead, try and negotiate those pieces in your contracts to non-disclosure or confidentiality agreements. And there'll be more information in the link that we share.
So let's segue into the next question. What is negotiable? Like, what can people negotiate on? What should they be looking to negotiate on? Ayori?
Yeah, I mean, everything is really negotiable. Now the question is what's negotiable for the opportunity that you're looking to move into? And so training, travel, conferences, compensation for conferences. There are all sorts of different packages that people have around family. You may be able to get some sort of stipends for childcare. In some cases, you can get stipends for elder care, your gym membership, other kind of benefits, your time off from work, your time working from home. International travel is also something that you should be thinking about negotiating. If you haven't had any international exposure in your work, you should be, if you're a Linux administrator or any kind of technical employee in a global company, you should be trying to negotiate opportunities to go and visit at least some of those other global hubs and get more exposure to other teams. That's actually going to help your mobility in the future. It's going to help with your visibility, and it's going to help position you for other things in the future. Yeah, salary, stock. Am I missing anything? What else out there?
For 401k match or not? Of course, time off. Also grad school.
Yeah.
Whether or not you want to go to grad school, whether it's your master's or your PhD or to finish college or whatnot, because like when I was at SAIC, they actually had a program internally to the company where they paid for you to go to grad school. Like, hey, go to grad school, we'll pay for that. So understanding like what, finding out some internals, you can ask around, hit people up on LinkedIn, finding out what kind of benefits they have with inside the company that you can get access to. Some people have access to continual education things. Most of the time it's Skillport, but some people have access to a Pluralsight, or they may have access to, Khan Academy or something of that nature where you can take some free classes or something of that nature. But you want to make sure that whatever position you get into, you're continuing to educate yourself and increase your pay. So however you devise that package, I've seen people put in cars inside their package and houses. So, I've seen people negotiate, like I'm moving down, I'm leaving my car here, or I don't have a car, I need a car. You're gonna have to run this lease for me, and they'll run a lease for them, on a C200 or C250 Mercedes at $300 a month, and the company takes care of it. I've seen people get houses put into their negotiation where they're paying the down payment on their house for them and their entire family to move, and on top of that, put them into a hotel until the house gets finalized as well too. So it's a lot of things that you can negotiate. It's just knowing your worth and what you and understand when you ask these things now. They're gonna be expecting performance. That's just what it is, but go in with knowing that that performance that you're gonna probably outshine them. Like, you're dropping the ball on them or drop the mic. So that's just what it is. But everything is negotiable. Just understand smaller companies probably have not as a big budget if they are maybe a startup. So they may have like, a limited time off, and you can kind of negotiate other things. Bigger companies, depending on the the little subset of that company, they may have a bigger budget and they can give you something. So it's dependent on where that company is at in their stage and what contract they're actually going after. A contract may be $1 billion contract. You never know. You never know until you ask. The only thing they can say is no. So put it all out on the table. Like if you know what I'm saying, if you know that you need a wardrobe change, put that in there somehow, finesse it, make it sound good. But I mean, I don't see the harm in asking for what you want. The worst, they could tell you is no.
Yeah, I want to add to that. I want to add things like, dry cleaning. You can negotiate for spot signing bonuses. Performance bonuses. You can negotiate on the percentage of your performance bonus in some cases. And there's another one that I'm missing.
Reviews, how often you come up for reviews. I've seen people negotiate reviews, like they may take a lower salary or something like that, and then they'll come back and say, okay, well, within 6 months I want a review, and they'll put that into the contract where it's binding, where they have to review them in 6 months for, for a higher salary.
Right.
Yes, and coaching as well. You can negotiate that. You can negotiate in a speaker coach, if you want to make sure that you're doing public speaking on behalf of your trade or your company, or an executive coach if you're looking to move up the channel.
Right.
You can negotiate in mentorship. There's all sorts of stuff. So like just instead of thinking of it like, oh, what do I need to negotiate? Just start thinking about what are the things that I really need for my career, and just write out a list, put it all in a list. Start asking other people what are the things that help them, and if it sounds like, oh, I think I want that, put that in your list, right? So you're doing discovery around things that have helped other people in your industry, in your field, in your region, but go beyond your region as well. If you're a member in our Slack channel, right, Blacks in Technology Slack channel, or any other Slack groups, that gives you space to start having these conversations and finding out more information. So that's just all a part of your process.
So, and that goes well into the next question, because a lot of the things that we're talking about, to some people, let's just say to people that are kind of new to the industry, or just even new to the job market, right? Like that type of stuff can sound like way out there, like, whoa, like I don't even have a job yet. How, what puts me in a position to be able to negotiate these types of things? Or someone who only has a few years of experience, right? Like it's intimidating because you don't want to, I guess some people feel like they don't want that opportunity to pass them by, right? So, a couple of things in that. What puts you in a position to negotiate, and how can a person kind of find that confidence within themselves to be able to even bring that type of stuff to the table? Ayori, you want to start first, Tameika?
Well, yeah, I give you something that it's a little different aspect than what probably most would consider. So doing these conferences and talking at conferences and picking out subjects that I have no clue how they work and how they intertwine with each other forces me to push my skill sets a little further. So with pushing my skill sets a little further gives me another advantage on my resume to say, okay, well, if say a job comes up to do automation with Azure or something of that nature, I can say I did that because I actually did it. Like I didn't wait for the job to give me those skill sets. I went and obtained those on my own. So now it changes the tone in which you interview with, because now you're like, I spoke on it. I actually wrote the documentation, and I also I turned around and actually was able to present and demo this to other people. So now your confidence level, because you spoke about it, goes up. Then you can speak intelligent about it because you presented it as a topic. And now you have leverage on your resume and when you're negotiating and talking. So that's just a different aspect of how to gain confidence, but it's also a different aspect on how to, get in and meet and network with, meet other people that you have probably never talked to before, or probably won't even pass up just in your a day-to-day job. So that's just a different aspect on how I look at things and how I build up confidence and how I'm able to, walk into a room and know that, these people are here to listen to me. So I set the tone for this talk, but I also set the tone for my skill level as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I would add to that is, when people are taking you into their company, they're always looking for leaders. And the people who negotiate well are going to be the best leaders. So if you're new in your career and you're just starting out, or you've been in your career, you know, for so long, and now you're just kind of waking up to this negotiation thing. When you negotiate, people just see that you're advocating for your own self-interest. If you can advocate for your own self-interest, that's going to make you a lot better at advocating for the company's self-interest, the company's interest. So who am I going to put into this position? The person who is afraid to ask for what they want, or the person who says, this is exactly what I want? And I know that I'm putting this person in a position to represent my company. I'm going to choose the one that's confident, and I'm going to choose the one that is getting what they want. Because they're going to get more for my company. They're going to get more for my customers. They're going to be a stronger advocate. And so that's really just about communication and confidence. And practicing confidence starts in the mind. 100% starts in the mind. So you have to start visualizing yourself. If there's something that you want, you have to start visualizing yourself with that thing. You know, if you feel like it's excessive and it's not necessary for you, that's okay. You can still visualize it. How would it enhance your life? What could you do for others if you had it? Make a vision. The more you have a vision of these things, and this is what we do with Life Model Design, is we help people create their visions. We help people create their moonshots and connect that back to the values of their life and what they will be able to do with those things even before they get it in hand. So just starting from the visualization, that's going to start to increase your confidence. And then the next thing you do is you just start practicing saying the things that matter to you. And you can say it in the mirror. You can say it to other people. And if you have people who make you feel embarrassed about these kinds of things, find new friends. Find new friends. Find new friends. Find new friends. They're not going to help you get anything, and they're not going to go out and get anything for themselves. So you got to start visualizing it, and you got to practice it with your words. And then body language too. That's another thing that you can learn to practice. And it all comes in time. Like, you don't have to feel like you need to rush it. But it will pay off in every area of your life. It's going to pay off when you're negotiating between, you know, partner A and partner B. Which one am I going to get with? Right? Right. It's going to pay off there too. So, you know, when you're buying your car, it's going to pay off everywhere. So this is a skill that just continues to return on everything that you invest into it.
Right. And I want to add on to that in terms of, like you say, find new friends. Like I spoke about this in Slack before. I've been around people who are your friends and like, well, you're always getting jobs to, you know, go into these, you know, salary range wars. And my thing has always been, and still is, so you know, like, that's what you want. Like, you know, you want, you know, like, I don't know of any person that's like, well, this company over here offered me more, but this company over here offered me less, but they were the first. So I'm not going to do that to this company because they don't deserve. No, you gonna bounce with you rolling with the money if that's what you're looking for. You know what I mean? Like, if that's what you're looking for. But I mean, like, you know, finding your network of people that help elevate your skill sets and help elevate your train of thought is very important, especially when you're going out for negotiations, because that gives you a different mindset of like how to negotiate. You know, you may want to, you know, they may not have a group for women or a group for men at that company, but you know, you can ask that when you're talking to them, but you know, you may want to start it yourself when you get there. Like, hey, I think this is something that you need. I can see how this can be beneficial for everyone here. You know, if I came in, I could do this, I could do that. Let's get this going because I've seen this happen over here and it was effective and it was better. But knowing just knowing what ways you can create, you know, your own lane, your own path, be your own champion, You know, even if you're the only one in the parade and it's just air around you, that's all right. It's your parade. You can make up whatever you want. It's your vision. You can do whatever. However, you be your own champion. Be supportive of yourself. And I think when we get into tech, I think we get lost in the sauce of that. And we get lost in the sauce when we're negotiating too, because we always say like, that's enough. I'm not gonna try to ask them for any more, because if I ask, then they may not give me the job. If they don't give you the job, cool. That wasn't the job for you. It may be a blessing that one, even the one you needed. It's another one coming around the corner that's probably gonna double that one. It's okay. You know, just be confident with what you want and what you're looking for when you're stepping out there, and just make sure your platform that's around you got your back.
Yeah, I want to add one thing. When you're negotiating, there are certain things that you need to get on paper, and then there's some certain things that you may not need to get on paper. It's always better if you can get everything written in contract. But if you're dealing with somebody where you know, you can get a certain amount of flexibility just because of who your manager is. You know, get as much of that as you can. Get whatever you can, and you know, and make sure you leverage that. You got to keep in mind that if you do a situation like that, your next manager shift that might not carry over. You might have to do some extra work to get that to carry over, or it may not carry over. But what you need to be doing is focusing on maximizing the value that you get when you've got it. Because think of it this way. A lot of people, like Tameika said earlier, a lot of people are not staying in these jobs for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years anymore. So if you get a good thing with a manager for 1 year, go for it, run it through. You start thinking about shifting, or you start thinking about shifting, make sure you're in that interview mode and looking for your next opportunity. And the term that they use is passive candidates. I don't know if you've heard that term before, but when they're looking for, sorry, that's me.
Somebody else trying to join with us?
Sorry about that. The term that recruiting uses when they're really trying to court top talent and elusive talent is they're called passive. They're not actively looking. They're trying to convince you to make a role shift, and they have a whole different red carpet that they will roll out for you when you're in that category.
Interesting. And so I kind of wanted to talk about, we only have a few minutes left, a couple of, I guess, kind of industry myths, so to speak. One of them, man, we have quite a few questions to go over, but we only have limited amount of time. So I asked this question. There's the myth that you should never take a counteroffer from your job, from your current job. I've actually done it a couple of times, and it's always worked out to my benefit. So I want to hear from you, Ayori. What's your perspective on, you interview for a job, that job offers you, what you want as far as salary and everything else is negotiated, and then all of a sudden you turn around and you give your 2 weeks to your current job, and then your current job says, well, heck, we can do that, and they turn around and match. What's your opinion on that?
I think that if you really don't like the job, if you were looking because you didn't like the job, then you shouldn't take the counteroffer. You should go ahead and move on. But if you like the job, and if they're giving you flexibility and things that's beneficial to you and your family and your lifestyle, then why not? Go ahead, stick with it. You can always look for a new job. You can accept their counteroffer and still look for a new job and get an extra couple paychecks. Like there's nothing wrong with that. This is a business. Everyone knows it's business. And even when folks try and pull like the loyalty card on you, like they're running game on you, because if it comes down to them, when they have to make a decision to leave or stay, they're not going to think about, well, this person reports to me and I just gave them a promotion on my team, so I have to stay. They're not going to say that.
Yeah, for me, I had that situation happen to me. Found out the guy that I was working with, we were both on the team together. He's making 30 to 35,000 more than what I was, and I was like, oh, nah, I'm not gonna stay for that. I end up getting an interview, bringing me up well past that, and I was like, I turned in my 2 weeks. The day before I was due to leave, they matched. I was like, no, it wasn't a priority for you. It wasn't something that you know, when I went to you and told you what the situation was, they still said no. But now all of a sudden I'm getting ready to leave and you can't find anybody to replace me. You're like, you want a match, and I'm like, no, I'm good. So it's those things. Have I stayed at a company where they matched and I put an offer out there? Yeah. I mean, not only just because I like the company, but it was my social life around that, like being able to get home at a certain time, school, travel, other social factors that come into play with that, where versus you may go somewhere, you may get a better offer somewhere else, but that offer, takes you an hour to commute versus this may take you 20 minutes to commute. So, you have to weigh what it's worth for yourself.
Right. And I want to, kind of add to that and reiterate that point, that those things play a huge factor, or they should play a huge factor in whether or not you accept a match or a counter offer, because those things matter to you on a personal level, right? So how long is my commute? Is this next job going to allow me to increase my skill sets, right? Things like that, that should be a factor in determining whether or not you either stay or you leave a job. Does this next, so for instance, if the company that you currently work at, if they have the flexibility that you need in your life and your lifestyle, but the company that offered you, say for instance, more money, they don't, like, and then all of a sudden you get that counter offer where they match that might be the determining factor in whether or not you decide to stay, right? Like, who doesn't want flexibility in their job? Who doesn't want to be able to have that work-life balance? And so that's a huge, it should be a huge factor when you're making decisions like that. I got a couple of more questions before we get out of here. So having to, how do you go about declining offers, right? And not kind of like burning bridges, right? I've been in situations where I've actually accepted a position and then end up having to say, I'm actually not coming. So, kind of what's the best way to, and to me, that's a negotiating thing as well, right? So kind of on two levels, how do you decline like an initial offer? For instance, say they offer you this much as far as salary and you say, no, that's not enough. How do you kind of word that? And then what happens if you do accept the position, right? And then come back later and say you no longer want the position? We'll start off with you, Ayori.
Well, I think anytime, like if you don't want a position and you're pretty confident that you're going to walk away from it, I don't think you should just say, I don't want it. I think you should say, this is not enough for me. And you should let them ask you what else you need. And you should go ahead and have that conversation. Like it's fine to have that conversation and then still say, no, I thought about it and I'm still, it's not the right one for me. Because you just want to be gathering data. You just want to be gathering intel all the time, as much as possible. Get in this spreadsheet if you can.
No, elaborate. Go ahead, elaborate on that. I think that's I think that's, you know, this is probably the first time I've ever heard that being used in that way, like discovery and gathering intel, gathering information. You know, maybe I do it without knowing. I don't know, but elaborate on that a little bit more. I think that's important.
You know, there's a lot of recruiters out there. You know, sometimes, you know, they try and scare you, I think, into, you know, feeling like you're powerless. And at the end of the day, you know, operate from a sense of integrity. But do your discovery, learn, find out what's out there. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing. And it'll position you better for the future. And the other thing I would say is that if you ever find yourself in a situation where you're talking to a company and you're talking with an HR person that you like, that you feel like you actually like having some kind of good connection with, if you can maintain those relationships just as relationships, do it. You don't have to go work for the company. Matter of fact, that's true with every interview. You meet people you're interviewing with and you decide not to go with that company, you can still keep those people in your network. You can say, hey, you know, what's going on with you guys now? Let me stop by. I'm going to come grab a coffee with you. And most likely, if they liked you the first time, they're going to like you again. Yeah. And, you know, just be in the community, be a part of the community. And that gives you, I think, a lot more leeway to advocate for what you want and for people to respect what you want and respect your needs. And it's not about burning bridges. It's about, you know, knowing what you need, and people respect that.
Right. I mean, I agree with that. And at the same token too, and when it comes down to letting the job down, that's twofold, right? In my situation, they didn't communicate to me. You know, they didn't let me know. So it's kind of like, you know, do you still want to have a rapport with that type of recruiter? You know, so you have to pick and choose your battles on that one. Like, do you still want that rapport? But at the same token, when you're letting someone down, it's kind of twofold. You can keep the relationship, or if they choose to, because it's a two-way street there. You know, you can try to keep a relationship with someone, but if they don't, you know, reciprocate back, you know, that's kind of null and void. But I will also say, you don't necessarily have to keep the relationship with just that recruiter in that office. It may be another recruiter in that office that you can have a relationship with. Usually most of the times when I, from what I've seen, when I'm getting, when I hit recruiters, I'm probably getting 2 recruiters from one office because they're pulling from the same database. So you kind of feel out which recruiter is going to be, you know, the best one for you to kind of have that rapport with. So that initial recruiter may not be the recruiter for you. It may actually be the other one over here. So, you know, I just say kind of weigh your offers. You gotta feel people out on that one.
Yeah. Recruiters who remember the things that I said, and I don't care if they remember it literally off the top of their head or if they just wrote it down somewhere and they were organized enough to bring it back up and make me feel like they remember me. I don't care. Either way, those are the kind of organized, focused, structured recruiters that I want to be continuing relationships and rapport with. Because if they move from wherever they are now and they go to another place, and hey, you know what's happening? It could be good.
I second that. I've had experiences with recruiters who are more personable, and you know, they will talk to you regardless whether or not you're looking for a job. They will still go and take you out to lunch every once in a while, just to check in, just to see how you're doing, just on a personal level. And it's not always about, you know, them trying to get you into a position. And then ultimately, I know that that's probably where they want to eventually go, but they love to build those that personal relationship, and that is actually a priority to them over, you know, just trying to shove you into a position. Those are the types of recruiters that I've had the best experience with, and those recruiters, I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever found a job through them, but you know what the cool part about that is that you will be confident enough that you will pass on or refer somebody else to that recruiter. Recruiters who don't have that rapport with me, who just feel like, you know, I'm just a number, just try to shove in a job, I would never refer someone or recommend them or recommend anyone to them. But there are recruiters who I've had relationships with where they weren't able to find a position, but they connected with me on a more personal level, to where when I did leave a job, I actually recommended them to help the company out, backfill my position, right? So when it comes to recruiters, those are, you know, for me, that's what I look for in a recruiter. I don't just look for, hey, just find me a job, because it might not always work out like that. And last question before we get out of here. Which one of these do I want to be the last question? When is the right time to begin negotiating?
I say day one.
Always be negotiating.
always
be negotiating.
Yeah, always, like day one. As soon as you get the email, you look it over, you read day one, like that. I mean, I mean, if you talk to a recruiter, they'll tell you like, I'm here for you or whatever, but I mean, that's really what they're supposed to be there for. They're supposed to be there for you, but I mean, you're your own person, right? You know what you need, you know what you want. So I say day one.
Ayori?
Yeah, always be negotiating. And negotiating isn't always, here's what I need. Negotiating is gathering intel, finding out what other people get. It's positioning things that are important to you, and seeing what their responses are, and building up your list of requirements so that you have it ready to slide on over when you enter into active negotiating.
Excellent. And any last words before we jump out of here? I know that we could probably keep going on this topic, but I definitely want to respect both of your time. So,
yes.
Any last words?
Selfpreneur.com, theselfpreneur.com. Subscribe. Also go to lifemodeldesign.com. Subscribe to our newsletter there. And hit us up when you're looking to do your next career move or life transition. Make sure you're leveraging Life Model Design.
Excellent.
So, yeah, so same women in Linux, everything, social media, including Facebook. You know, some people don't consider that social media anymore. It's for the old folks. But yeah. So for me, the last little word or phrase I would want to say is just make sure you're getting the best you out of the interview and out of the negotiating, because at the end of the day, it's what you can provide for you. And let's just be honest, we're looking to provide, you know, generational wealth. Then that can go into a whole nother topic of being like CEOs and CTOs at companies. Won't get into that, but however, you can start with, you know, just the small things by, you know, being able to put away, you know, 10,000 a month, where you can say, okay, I put away 10,000 a month. What I'm going to do with that come next year? How am I going to buy this property over here? How am I going to buy this land over here? How am I going to give back to my community or to my family, whatever the case may be? Just making sure you're keeping that, you know, that at the top of your mindset.
Excellent. And I want to thank both of our guests. I think I already dropped off. She might have had someone come in. Thank both of our guests. Thank you, Tameika, for sharing your knowledge and your advice with our audience. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. And check us out. I mean, we discuss these types of things on Slack. So go to blacksandtechnology.net. There's a link at the bottom for the Slack invite. Just click on it. Fill out the short form. You'll get your invite automatically. And check us next time. We're going to have, some more topics like this where we talk about, some interesting things when it comes to getting hired. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Good night.
Good night.